special to be among you and perhaps learn a little bit about your practice as writers and translators of poetry. This press that you can see here, Pamenar Press, is started in 2019, September, with the purpose of putting together multilingual, multicultural, and translational practices in the format of books and also online publishing, magazine, and ebooks. And we are interested in international work with an angle into with an experimental angle into it. So we have so far published. If could you bring the books part?
This one?
Yeah, that's good. Yes, and I can just bring the. If you go actually to the website pamenarpress.com. You can see the list of books that we published, but within these 2 years that we've been publishing books, we published Carlos Soto Román's book, which is a multilingual book in Spanish and English, Nature of Objects, in 2019. We are having Fran Locke's book, Aina Jackal Dog, published by the end of this month. From Pamenar Press, we have an anthology of visual poetry. We have another bilingual book, Against Travel, Anti-Voyage, by Rachel Levitsky, in English and French. From by Philip Terry is a collection of his writings and essays on poetry. And also we have what else we published, and I'm thinking a poster poem by Stephen Emerson. That so we are trying to have publish multi-genres, cross-genres, and also in different mediums, audio, video on our website, and poster poem, and books in the print format. Is there anything that, also could you please go to the magazine part? Because I'd be very interested if people could submit to, this is Carlos's book. This is Nature of Objects. And these are two upcoming books. This is parts of the magazine that I put together. You can see that we have visual poetry, we have, and if you go to the magazine, the website is there, online magazine, you can see that there are, these are some of the people that we published in our magazine. But if you go to the link, you can see that there's sometimes audio recordings of the poems. Sometimes the poem is just the whole performance, some video links, and also visual poetry. So it's not only textual work that is published on Pamenar magazine, but what we are interested in, again, are experimental work from across cultures.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you so much for showing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is the magazine, and we're working on actually developing the magazine more in next few months, hopefully. We're having it, because right now it's we get an update once a week, but maybe we are working more towards making it a monthly magazine, but these are all just discussions.
Mm-hmm.
And as you can see, there are a number of writers, international writers. We are very open to have submissions in original languages or in translation.
You have also content for download.
Yeah, this is the first ebook that we have done. We are thinking of, and this is available for free. This is Sally Shakti Willow's book. It's called Lila in Lockdown. This is our first ebook.
Cool. Mm-hmm.
So yes, hope to see work from this workshop, or any work that you've been doing. If you submit to us, it will be a pleasure.
You have a link there, right, in the web page where you can submit work.
Yes, and also I will write the email here, info@pamenarpress.com.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. That's the address. Okay.
Yes, you can just
directly
email it here.
So Ghazal, I was wondering if you can tell us a bit about your experience as a translator from Persian to English and English to Persian.
Yes, I've let me think which one to start with.
Yeah, maybe
well, it is obviously it's easier for me to translate from English to Persian because I feel stronger in my mother tongue, which is Persian. But I also have translated the other way around from Persian to English. I translated actually prose poems by Pamenar Press, who's a poet and photographer, and also a line poem by Mehdi Akhavan Salis, a modernist Iranian poet, also by Muhammad Ali Sepanlu. I think he's being more translated these days because I've seen some translations of Muhammad Ali Sepanlu, who passed away in 2015 here and there, which I'm very happy to see that. So yes, these are the experiments of translating people directly into English. However, I work with translation in my writing, and my practice is based on translation and translational experiments. And for instance, the text that you looked at, the seasickness, also is vaguely based on translation because I've incorporated texts from medical writing, books of spells, magical writing, and also self-help. And I worked with the language of that writing, and some of them were direct or indirect translations of some originals that were mainly found material that I put into the text. So my practice as a writer is based on translation. Sometimes, yeah. Is it a good answer, Carlos? Should I?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I was wondering how I mean, this came to you naturally. I mean, the fact that the obviously, you're moving across different cities and like living through different poetic scenes, and but also I wanted to ask you about like what's going on like in Tehran literary scene, like what kind of books, for example, are you interested in translated into Persian, or what is the readership there? What texts do you think they're most attracted to, and what is your collaboration as translator in that regard?
Very interesting. That if I can just take a little tiny bit of excursion about the Tehran literary scene.
Absolutely, yeah.
To the experimental scene, because then that would become a little vast, and I don't have that much of knowledge about it. But if I can talk a little bit about the experimental scene and my experience with them in Tehran, it goes back to 2016 when I started along with Román Mortazavi an Iranian artist, sculptist, and performer and painter, a group called Zeer Pel-leh that was a hub for experimental practices and performance. And there we had actually a vast group of people in Tehran and other cities, not limited in Tehran, that gathered and did number of performances, published small books, and collaborated on different ideas. That was very short. It was less than a year before the center had to close down due to financial pressures, but it was something unique that I'm very interested in maybe one day putting together all the experiments that happened over there. And, you know, the potential of this kind of work that exists there and is waiting for a venue to come out.
Yeah.
And if I may add, with starting Pamenar, of course, you know, you can't do everything at once, but I had that Zeer Pel-leh in mind. And I was thinking perhaps of creating an online venue that maybe people from different parts of the world, those peoples from Zeer Pel-leh in Tehran or over here and wherever you are, can get together and collaborate on different projects. But of course, things take time. I mean,
you were also trying to organize a residency, in different cities.
It was right before Corona. Yes, I even took that the page off from the web page. But yes.
So I mean, it couldn't. You couldn't start that project, right? Because
I have not started. No.
Okay.
No. Yeah.
And Rodrigo, please go ahead.
Yes, it's very interesting. I was thinking about the possibilities of publications, of translations in Iran, because I met in Zurich a few years ago a translator called Akram Bedramnia, who is a translator of James Joyce and Vladimir Nabokov. And she was telling us about the situations of censorship and also the possibilities of taking books, publishing them abroad, and taking them via underground or through the borders. Yeah, because she said that some copies of Ulysses were published in London and then brought to Tehran, kind of smuggled into Iran. And,
that's very interesting, Rodrigo. There is a history into that.
Yes, I wanted to know more about.
I didn't know about Ulysses being translated in London and going back to Tehran. It's very interesting. Must be very easier right now that it's an the internet age that you can just publish anything basically. But I didn't know about that. But the famous book of Iranian literature that has been published abroad has been The Blind Owl, that for the first time was published in Calcutta. And I have to Google, and I don't know what year, but it must be in 20s, no? I don't know, or 30s. So that was, first published in Calcutta because it couldn't be published in Iran. And then, there's a history, but I don't know how financially it would be possible, because with the, just with the Iranian rial not being strong, is it possible to publish a book in United Kingdom and then bring it back to Iran?
Yeah.
Would people be able to afford buying it? That's very interesting.
It was done, I think, about four years ago, and now it's available for download, free downloads. But I would like to hear now more about the experimental work you've done with translation.
I know that the translation of the Ulysses by Manuchehr Badi'i is not published yet. So was that person's own translation, or?
Yeah, I met her at
her own translation of Joyce. Okay.
Yeah, I met her at the James Joyce Institute in Zurich.
Right. Okay.
And she was translating because she first published the first 4 chapters of Ulysses, and now she was working on the second half.
Rest of the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can look into it, and if I know the book is out, I write to the group through you or Carlos. I'll let everyone know if the book is accessible in Iran.
Cool. Now, I was just telling you that we would like to hear about your experimental works in translation. Would you like me to show slides or a specific site? Because here I have some.
I shared with Rodrigo the translation that Safa Fati did of Sea Cygnus, which I think it's very interesting if we can look that up.
Yeah, that's it.
And well, you already talked a bit Sea Cygnus. I mean, the different components, like
that
different
was
kind of languages.
Part of that. Are you still talking? Sorry.
No, please go ahead. Ghazal, can you hear me?
No, I didn't hear you. I don't know if it's my internet or just in general.
Oh, no worries.
I heard Safa Fati's name, but
I was saying that we can check. I mean, this translation that yes, I can hear you absolutely. So if you can, I mean, you already talk a little bit about Sea Cygnus, but it's been translated into a different language, and maybe you can talk about this language struggle that is present in the text that we were kind of analyzing it.
Yeah, we were talking about it. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to know what discussion did you get into, but this Safa's translation was done as part of this is translated by Read Journal, which is part of the Tamaas Foundation. So this was done during the 2019 Symposium of Translation, which happened in Paris. So for 7 days, we worked together in couples, me and Safa, and then other people worked the groups of 2 on different translations. But yes, how I did it was because Safa doesn't speak Persian. So she translated the English into French, and then the Persian, we just talked about it, and I translated it into English for her. And then she translated exactly the Persian words into Arabic and English words into, here it is, into French, which was very interesting because the struggle that I had in mind writing this text exactly worked when we did the Arabic and French translation, because exactly the same struggle, that historical struggle that Persian language might have with the English language or English culture happens between the French and Arabic. So even the struggle that I wanted to present in this text that would cause all the dis-ease, and I can see that with translation, the road is his paintings has changed a little bit. I never noticed, but yes, and also the other thing that is the same with writing in between Persian and English versus Arabic and French is that Arabic is written very much like Persian from right to left, and French and English and Spanish are written from left to right. So the seasickness happens as a result of trying to read from all these different directions and getting confused and getting motion sickness because of all these directions that that language basically attacks you. So that worked with Arabic perfectly. And I was very curious that how the struggle and also the direction is going to work with the Spanish translation of it. We talked with Carlos of leaving the Persian and then, you know, just adding the Spanish. We also talked about basically translating the idea and having a very free translation of this text into Spanish, which is Carlos's choice, but that sounds very good to me because this text itself is based on loose translations and free kind of translation, experimental writing. So yeah, I don't know, Carlos, have you decided on what to do with the second language there?
No, not yet. I mean, actually, we were talking during the workshop in different possibilities, and many of them were related with the formatting or like the actual, you know, the materiality of the page or of the book. But in an early conversation, you made a really interesting point that in order to recreate truly this clash, this struggle between languages, this tension, right? Probably we can try to find what other languages are historically in conflict with Spanish language. And then you suggested Mapudungun, for example, the Mapuche language, native language. Maybe that's an interesting alternative to bring or invite a Mapuche poet to do a collaboration, to work with the text. And since it's as you said, is loose translation or like, you know, like a free translation, try to recreate that game, that struggle with that friction as well with this language, with Mapuche language, which historically, you know, has had confrontations with the Spanish language as the hegemonic one. Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I was wondering if, sorry, I don't know if anybody has any comments on this particular text, because I would like to see the other one that Rodrigo just opened in the website, so we can talk a little bit about that one.
Yeah, let's move on.
Yes. Can you tell us about this wheel?
Oh, that's well, that's what it is. You found that changes review, I think. But it's actually, should I give away what it is, or I should just leave people? Because yes, I think I have an idea. It hasn't been explained, but this is based on the Indian, like what is in Mahabharata, the style of war. But then I want to have, I had it turning, and I don't know, it was a kind of internal war, I think, but I put it somewhere, yes, the chakra vuyaha. So if someone finds the word, I think would realize why this format.
Is it related somehow to the notion of motion sickness as well, or it's a completely different thing?
It can be. This motion sickness is something that I'm affected from, and I get sick in the car and in motion. So it might be might have been in my mind subconsciously, but yeah, very possible. But this, I was thinking about the inside and outside in war. And it has actually mentions of Al-Biruni, who was a translator, and his struggles between the inner world and the outer world, the Darun in Persian, inside, and Birun, which is outside. And Al-Biruni has that Birun in his name, which means outside, and interesting that he was a translator. So I tried to write about this battle of translating inside and outside into the format.
And Rodrigo, can you move the page a little bit
Yeah.
up so we can see? Yeah, I'm interested in that phrase there. Very important to the game theory world, that what language also allows you to do is lie. I think this is really interesting, because I mean I've heard some other pieces or works by you that deals with this notion of the hoax, like a literary game where you're trying to propose an idea, but at the end it turns to be a different one, and you're kind of like tricking or deceiving the reader in a way. Can you tell us about that? I don't know if Biographies, one of your book, is about that. I heard that, well, Biographies is a book written by Ghazal that is consists in basically tiny biographies of writers. And somebody told me that there were real writers or like friends of yours. Is that true or not? Or it's part of the part of the game, it's part of the hoax?
No, they're part of the game. They're just that the biographies were just the ideas, because we all have this struggle that isn't it terrible when people want a bio from you and you don't know what to write, and then sometimes people go on and on explaining on something that is not really that important and leaving the important points behind, and it's obvious to us when we read their bio. So Biographies were I think was based on that idea of the biography of imaginary writers.
Sorry, that's why the game with the chairs as well, because beside every poem there is a picture of an empty chair.
There's an empty chair, yes. But no, this was actually the suggestion of the publisher. This is a photographer that went to a village. This wasn't part of my project, so I shouldn't get the credit. I love the idea, but the credit is not mine. Apparently the artist went to the village and knocked on people's doors and asked to take a picture of their chairs, and the publisher thought these imaginary writers and empty chairs would work well together.
It actually does. So I don't know how we are on the time, but do you think we can read a little bit?
Sure. When we said we can read it in both languages, you mean that, or?
I don't know. We can read
idea.
from seasickness, so we can.
So if you
go
do it,
through...
then I read the Persian part. You can read the Spanish, and just when you see a Persian word, just stop a little bit. I say it in Persian.
Okay, perfect. Rodrigo, can you show the poem again, please? Remedios sobrenaturales.
Which one? Okay.
Sí.
¿En español primero?
Sí, en español. Vamos a hacer la lectura conjunta.
Cool.
No, el persa no. No.
Están preguntando si es necesario traducir desde el persa. And then we can read some of the If poem that I really love. Okay, you get to start, Ghazal, because the first word is in Persian.
The first word is درمان دریازدگی,
which means
cure of seasickness.
Okay, can you read it again, please? And then I'll start reading from there.
درمان دریازدگی.
Remedios sobrenaturales para la neuropatía fatal, altamente indivisibles, pero sin embargo en 19 secciones.
Aleph.
Tu nombre es Jeffrey. Viajas en automóvil aún sabiendo que la bicicleta tiene beneficios obvios, pero la conmoción no empieza ni con la bicicleta
Na.
ni con el auto. Empieza cuando necesitas tomar el ferry para cruzar el canal. La conmoción implica sentir náuseas, vómitos, palidez, sudoración, dolor de cabeza, mareos, malestar, aumento de la salivación, apatía, somnolencia, flatulencia, hiperventilación, conciencia del estómago. Todo lo que necesitas saber es que todos los seres vivos se ven afectados por el mal del mar, en diferentes grados. Jeffrey, reconócete a ti mismo como Quacksalver.
خزعبلات.
La práctica médica de
خزعبل.
recopilar rumores, pero evitando los atajos críticos.
باید توجه داشت اینها ساخته ذهن است. همه چیز هرچند خزعبل خالص نیست. اگر به معنی واقعی سرگیجه به سراغ انسان بیاید، به نظر می رسد که مفاهیم از معنا تهی شدند و همه چیز به طرز غریبی علمی است.
¿Estás pensando en una bicicleta versus un auto, Jeffrey? ¿Estás pensando en un tren versus un bote? Elige tu veneno. Ferrocarril versus marítimo. Si es lo primero, tendrás que ser yo para sentarte en un auto y sentirte mal por todo. Si es lo último, leer Ruffale, Ginger, Root and Sea Horizon 191995, rendimiento de viviendas en el mar, diarios de
دردهای مرگزا.
85-16298-209635, alucinación como registro de hipnotesis, C2000 y hoy APA sobre esfuerzo, cuando se está en el mar igual medidas de desatofonía, estiramiento del músculo extraocular. Figura 1.
آقای جفری داش 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 دریا داش 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 سلش داش 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 زدگی داش 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 تعادل پاتوفیزیولوژی 8KK منشأ گوش داخلی A ب ج دو 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 گ ت کمه سلش 1
Digamos que sientes una desorientación visual y que estás a punto de perder el equilibrio como si estuvieras en un catamarán en un mar ondulado. Figura 1. Te advierto que leer puede ser igual de peligroso. Es importante saber que las líneas de texto tienen un historial de ser rocosas en la bahía, a veces. Evita la confusión entre palabras y letras. Concéntrate solo en remedios, no en las causas. Piensa en el vegetal número 6 de la tabla. Luego, hierva un bucur. Si los filamentos se retuercen y enredan, reproduce sus sonidos en determinados momentos. 550. Mares agitados. Puedes sentirte en el mar con este o cualquier texto. C-Signes puede ser la abreviatura de Single European Act Signes, Acta Única Europea de la Enfermedad. Maldemar 17785/SDO ID ADDO OU. Deja hervir, sé generoso con él.
زمان B. Sorry.
Cuando estés en el mar, recuerda haber optado por el auto. En estrechos caminos de montaña, la naturaleza intimidante, un estacionamiento de varios pisos, sus sombras proyectadas en dos direcciones. Observando, Jeff en un taxi, el paisaje exterior simplemente provocando náusea. Es una tontería para un trastorno de procesamiento sensorial estar tan revuelto, pero lo está. Fines de septiembre 1983, justo antes de que terminaran sus días libres, antes de ExxonMobil y la masificación de IBM, un hombre llamado Jeffrey, víctima de una cinetosis severa, sale a tomar un taxi desde un extremo al otro de la ciudad. Tras el volante del taxi, un chofer barbudo, el señor Peyman, edad 51. Figura 2, camino. Alguien se acurruca en el asiento delantero. ¿Quién otro sino Jeffrey, apoyándose contra la ventana, como si mirara hacia abajo desde un acantilado? Alguien logró jalar su cuello hacia adentro del auto otra vez. El conductor se dio la vuelta y lo miró, sus ojos abiertos de par en par. Jeff susurró cosas inaudibles. Él dijo detente con una voz profunda y más resonante. Estoy enfermo, todos saben, me mencionan en el artículo del diario. Prohibiciones, exhortaciones. Ajá, ahora has empezado a temblar, no lo hagas. No mires hacia abajo, no leas nada, no pienses en tu padre borracho, no bajes la cabeza, no creas que eres un hombre blanco, que eres un blanco, siempre lo has sido. No te aferres a tu bolso, no pienses que una bala viene derecho a tu frente, no le hagas al conductor la pregunta que te mueres por hacer, no gimas, no gimas, no te rías, no intentes sonreír. Creo que lo voy a dejar hasta acá. I think I'm going to stop here, so we can have time for the other poem and some questions as well.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. That was lovely.
That sounds so nice to hear that you would read it. Sounds good in Spanish. Everything sounds better in Spanish.
Oh my God! I mean, Persian sounds incredible, but it was a really nice mixture. I think it's the first time. I mean, actually, I'm thinking that maybe this kind of projects could be developed not only in the page but also as an audio thing. You know, like and trying different versions, trying different languages, and see how the actual feeling of the sound comes to play.
Well, that's
to see that friction as well.
To work with different languages, sounds, and readings. It absolutely, I agree.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. So, I mean, Rodrigo, shall we read another poem, or do we like to take questions from the audience? Or for Ghazal?
I was silenced.
I
think we should read more poetry, actually.
Okay. Ghazal, would you like to read If?
Sure, but since it's in English, it's not Persian, would that be interesting, or you just want to read the translation, or I should read, it's fine with me either way. If there's time, I can read.
What do you guys think? I would love to hear Ghazal read in English as well, if you all agree.
In English also.
Sure.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a beautiful poem, so I would love to hear it in your voice. So whenever you're ready.
Okay, sure. I was just
and I don't know if you want to introduce, I when you read this poem, I think it was for the Brooklyn Rail Radical Poetry Sessions, you didn't want to explain much. I wonder if you would like to explain a little bit more now.
It's also just also for the seasickness. I was like a little bit sorry. I didn't mean to be rude, like being a little bit hesitant of translating Darman Zadegi, but which meant the cure for seasickness. But the whole idea of that piece was to be anti-translation. So none of the pieces that look like might be translations of each other are actually translations of each other. And they're talking, the Persian and English are talking about all different ideas completely. And this also answers to that question of yours, Carlos, earlier about being deceptive and like putting something there that doesn't, in reality, is not what it looks like. So that's why I just didn't want to explain much about the Persian word, because it's it can be something that you don't expect it to be. The idea is because, especially when you're working with this, and you're working with the power of the languages, right? You talked about it, the Spanish as a dominant language, and then the other languages that were dominated by Spanish, or Persian that has been dominated and is, though Iran was not completely colonized, but by English language or French back then. And, you know, all these languages that are under the influence of a stronger hegemonic language, they actually sound and look very innocent when they might not be. And so, yeah, and this is the room to do all the play that you want when, in fact, you look very pure and exotic and innocent, and you can't do any bad. So this is your chance to actually be as mean as you want. So this is the idea. It hasn't been mean though, but the idea is there.
Perfect. Okay, so
yes, and here, yes, I didn't explain the words, the Persian words that are in this poem F that I'm reading, because I believe that these belong to a certain part of the Iranian history. In particular, this poem happens in between 1906, that was the year of the Iranian constitutional revolution, and 1953, that was the year of the coup d'etat, basically British design, American implemented coup d'etat on Iran's Prime Minister Mohammad Mosadeq, and we still try to survive that many years on. But so this is about that particular time. The name of places, historical events, and people that appear there, I want them to be unexplained, because I think on its own, it draws this awareness of certain histories being peripheral history and not getting attention. So for people who don't know what it means, I want them to know that they don't know what these names mean. That's why it's not explained. And yeah.
Perfect.
May I start?
So, yes, please, whenever you're ready.
All right. Thank you. F. If the Bab Humayun and the Gulistan Palace existed, but you knew Reza Shah was nothing less than a land-grabbing pig, and nothing more than an illiterate Cossack Iranian on the payroll of the occupiers, if you knew he was in awe of the crown on that fat child king's head who walked down those stairs, and if the road was expanded, and if you knew you could get closer, a eucalyptus-lined street, the waterway, El Rel, made of stone in the south garden, if it looked in different order in a canary's eyes, if you were that canary. If things had been built to order differently, and yes, if there were azaleas, the skin, and the apparatus of modern life, I mean, if and only if we all agreed that there was a negative force there from the beginning, but back then, when I kept walking on the buffer zone, the oil was in neutral zones in Khuzestan, by the Amirkhiz, but by the Karun River, and the constitutionalism was still breathing in Tabriz, in Isfahan, in Rasht. And if we kept its story alive for many years, but forgot about our famines, and if we agreed that a pact of words can contain our mistrust, yet we chose silence as a method of self-care. And if Nasiruddin Shah had not lived for 1 million years, and if the Gulistan Palace maintained its light forever, and if you passed the Bab Humayun and the door stood ajar and you saw the Thames running in its rails, and if I had become modern enough to fill the chasm of Nasiruddin's feeling inferior, and if I repeated and kept repeating, but it still didn't connect me to anything new, if I believed in myself, if I was true to myself, if I repeatedly said, I love you to myself, peeping into a mirror, if I called my claws royal fingers, if I controlled the fragments of my psyche as they threatened to fracture again, if I purchased that hand cream, which I could buy if I paid more, then could I say, if I applied that cream, if I counted the numbers of streets leading to the palace, if I passed the rails and the garden, if I entered the building, if I went inside to see a class of statesmen smoking galyan, and if they saw me, if only they saw me crisscross, pigeon-toed and wobbly, but if they took me as a symbol of a nomadic uprising, and if just this time they cared to listen to the voice of Amir Khiz coming out of my chest as a bird song. But if I was found out, I mean, if they realized I was not a nomadic uprising, but that I was passing between the spheres of influence of lost territory, no more than a small piece in a great game. Remember that game? That tournament of shadows? Just passing the 19th century and the 20th as a canary, passing the Bab Humayun before thinking of entering the palace, and I cared nothing at that very moment for the monotony of statesmen. Instead, I was free enough to be transformed to anything. If I didn't want to be transformed into the Tehran police force since 1906 or 6 dynasties back, Tehran wasn't there, but the police were, not with that name. No, Gazme they were, no, or the Darughe. But if they were the Darughe, and if I passed from the Bab Humayun, if it occurred to me that some sort of resistance was tolerated, just a little, if that little could be communicated to the municipalities before everything crumbled, I mean, if there was a name for the nightmare daydream I'm capable of.
Sí. Si la puerta de Babu Humayun y el palacio de Golestán existieran, pero si supieras que Reza Shah era nada menos que un cerdo acaparador de tierras y nada más que un cosaco iraní analfabeto en la nómina de los invasores, si supieras que él estaba asombrado de la corona en la cabeza de ese niño rey gordo que bajó esas escaleras, y si el camino se expandiera, y si supieras que era posible acercarte, una calle bordeada de eucaliptus, el canal, un riachuelo de piedra en el jardín sur, si se viera en otro orden en los ojos de un canario, si tú fueras ese canario, si las cosas se hubieran construido para funcionar de manera diferente, y sí, si hubieras aleas, la piel y el aparato de la vida moderna, quiero decir, sí y solo sí, todos estuviéramos de acuerdo en que había una fuerza negativa allí desde el principio, pero entonces, cuando seguía caminando en la zona desmilitarizada, el petróleo estaba en zonas neutrales, en Juzestán, por el río Karun, y el constitucionalismo aún respiraba en Tabriz, en Isfahan, en Rasht, y si mantuvimos viva su historia durante muchos años, pero olvidamos nuestras hambrunas, si acordamos que un pacto de palabras puede albergar nuestra desconfianza, sin embargo elegimos el silencio como método de autocuidado. Y si Nasiruddin Shah no hubiera vivido durante 1 millón de años, y si el palacio de Golestán mantuviera su luz para siempre, y si pasaras Bab Humayun y la puerta estuviera entreabierta y vieras el Támesis corriendo por sus riachuelos, si me hubiera vuelto lo suficientemente moderna para llenar el abismo del complejo de inferioridad de Neseredín, y si repitiera y siguiera repitiendo, pero sin todavía conectarme con nada nuevo, si creyera en mí misma, si fuera fiel a mí misma, si repetidamente dijera te amo a mí misma, asomada en un espejo, si llamara a mis garras dedos reales, si controlara los fragmentos de mi psique de la misma forma en que amenazan con volver a fracturarse, si comprara esa crema de manos que podría comprar si pagara más, entonces podría decir si aplicara esa crema, si contara el número de calles que conducen al palacio, si pasara por los arroyos y el jardín, si ingresara en el edificio, si entrara para ver a un tipo de estadistas fumando gulián, y si me vieran, si solo vieran mi entrecruzada y tambaleante punta de paloma, pero si me llevaran como símbolo de un levantamiento nómada, y sí, solo esta vez les importara escuchar la voz de Amicris saliendo de mi pecho como el canto de un pájaro, pero si me descubrieran, me refiero a que si se dieran cuenta que yo no era un levantamiento nómada, sino que estaba pasando entre esferas de influencia, de territorio perdido, no más que una pequeña pieza en un gran juego. ¿Recuerdas ese juego? Ese torneo de sombras. Apenas pasaba el siglo XIX y el XX, como un canario pasaba el Bab Humayun antes de pensar en entrar en palacio, y no me importaba nada en ese mismo momento la monotonía de los estadistas. En cambio, yo era lo suficientemente libre como para transformarme en cualquier cosa. Si no quería transformarme en la policía de Teherán desde 1906 o 6 dinastías atrás, Teherán no estaba ahí, pero la policía sí estaba, no con ese nombre, no, era Gazmeh, ¿no? O los Darugeg, pero si fueron los Darugeg, y si pasara del Bab Humayun, y si me ocurriera que algún tipo de resistencia era tolerable, solo un poco, si ese poco se pudiera comunicar a los municipios antes de que todo se derrumbara, quiero decir, si hubiera un nombre para la pesadilla diurna de la que soy capaz. I must apologize for my mispronunciation of the Persian names, but it's such a wonderful poem. I really love it, and actually I've been thinking to probably incorporate it to the other project. I don't know if there is any questions or comments from the audience. I'm checking the chat messages. Or Ghazal, if you want to tell us something else about your projects or your practice. You also have been like collaborating live with other poets. I mean, if I mean, the work you have posted on YouTube, most of the times you're reading like with other poets. Are those projects that do you create like beforehand, or is just like kind of like an impromptu performance? Is part of a larger project? How do you deal with that?
Well, I'm very interested in collaboration. So I don't know what videos you've seen. They perhaps might be part of the series that Stephen Fowler put together with poets, because he puts it online. But there also might be some of other projects that we did also based on the idea of translation, the homophonic translation, working with the sound of different languages and poetry, and then trying to work with it in writing. For instance, in 2011, I did this collaboration with Ricardo Marques from Portugal, and the poem was called Portugal, which the word in Persian means Portugal, means orange, and we did this homophonic translation of just hearing each other in our mother tongue, which we wouldn't understand, and then writing it in English. I did the same thing with a Catalan Spanish writer, Albert Pellissier, that we translated 4 lines out of the supermarket's newspaper, and we translated it so many times into Persian, English, Spanish, and Catalan, and back again and back again and back again, and then performed it. That was, I think, 2015.
Also here in Chile, you were able to perform a couple of times, and also in collaboration or in a very performatic way as well, like using different elements.
That
like,
was in response with the Museum of Memory in Chile, that Nia Davies and I did this performance of, because we believe that the story of the at the Museum of Memory started just right in the middle of what happened, because the exhibit starts from the time that tanks arrived in Valparaiso, not before that, and what hands were involved into that coup d'etat. And of course, as an Iranian, that the Chilean 9/11 was modeled after the Iranian coup d'etat 20 years after that. I'm very sensitive in any coup d'etat related. So that was very interesting for me. And then we decided with Nia Davies to do a performance based on where the story starts, and where do you start, where the narrative starts, where can you tell the tale. So what we did is we picked different books and magazines or whatever we could find, and started either from bottom up or up down or in the middle, or we're trying for a point to tell the tale, but then be honest in representing the story.
Wonderful, great. I wonder if anybody has some questions or comments from the audience. Chicos y chicas, ¿quieren preguntar algo?
Más que
o comentar.
Muy inspirador, ¿no? Sumamente inspirador.
I would like to ask a question. Ghazal, you told us that the one language may act with more freedom when it is not fully understood and it is under
kind of disguise, yeah.
The disguise, yes. So I really would like you to talk more about how could it be translated. You told us about one case in Arabic and French, but still most people in French wouldn't understand. So you think that part should be not fully understood by most people on a country, or should we think a possibility, because we were talking about that, about translating it in other parts of the text, maybe in the end, maybe with some I don't know the English name, some paper
an index
that you could see through, or things like that. So because it is not just babble, it's a language, it's a culture, it's a political act, but it's not understood. It's just for most people who live in the UK or in the US, most people won't understand a word. They won't even know how to pronounce it. Well, it's my case in Brazil. So I just would like to hear a little bit more of how you think about that, and maybe if you have translated something analogous to that. I have translated Uliana Wolf's work. I don't know if you know her work. That has some problems between German and English, and I tried to translate it between analogous problems between Portuguese and Spanish, but it creates another political gesture. So I would like to hear a little bit more from you. I don't know if I was clear. I was just
real excellent. I really wish I had an answer, but I can say what I think right now, maybe as a suggestion. Though you know, this translation of this work is Carlos's job, so I'm not suggesting anything, and I'm happy with whatever Carlos decides to do on that. But also on how to translate really the things that we don't understand. I think it can be done in like any other literature. The translator is free to choose one way or another. We can go into detailed, accurate translation of a text, and you know that even the seasickness, you can translate it to death. You can just translate each part in separately. You can, but you also can translate it an accurate translation and also a homophonic translation. But you know, the different kind of translations and approaches into language has made that text. Any kind of approach into translation can translate it, I believe, but then I would have no problem if someone wants to exactly translate it as it is in the page in the original, or if someone wants to take a freer approach into it. But I see all of these approaches, translations, but then again, that's according to me. I'm not saying which is better, but it can be, it can be conceptually translated. The idea can be translated to another text, as I think Carlos was a little bit thinking about that as well. Or it can be half and half. It can be some of the texts might be translated accurately, and then some of them might be translated homophonically or visually. I think as an author, I'm okay with all of that. But if I was a translator, I don't know, I perhaps would have mixed all these different ways of translation. If I may give you an example of a separate text that I worked on, and I didn't know how to translate it because I couldn't understand it, because I also work on series of talismanic writing and spells, Persian spells that I found at Bazaar of Tehran. But these are not like real magical books, and these are just found texts, and they don't have any real value into the world of magic or science or anything. Those texts that those magical texts, I can't read them because most of them are written, first of all, in the sign language, in signs and shapes and numbers and boxes, and or also by people who are pretty illiterate, that you can't really understand what they're writing. So what I do, I actually, in translation of these texts, I combine even machine translation. I write whatever I understand into machine and get a translation, then work with what I have. I try to translate it visually with the shape, what it represents to me. I combine it with some explanations of the word that appears to my head. So I completely work with it. I use it as a springboard to write basically something else, but that is loosely related to the original text that I work with. If that answered your question, I don't know.
Yes. Thank you very much for the presentation, the reading, and the answers.
I don't know if we're okay with the time, or if we have some room for more questions or comments. Rodrigo, Carla, ¿estamos bien con el tiempo? ¿Tenemos más? O...
No, I think we're just getting there, but I would like to ask once more if there is someone interested in asking or commenting something, or just we can leave it there. Carla?
Sí,
Okay.
no sé si, sí.
Well, thank you very much, Ghazal. It was a pleasure to have you here. Also, Carlos, thanks for the translation and the presentation. It was, we're very happy to have you here. Well, I think we can close the session now. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ghazal, for your generosity and for your work. That is marvelous, and to join us today. And thank you all for coming and participating.
Well, thank you. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me. I just put in the chat again the email address of Pamenar, and looking forward to hearing from you all. Thanks so much. Carlos, Rodrigo, Carla, Marielle.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias.
Vamos a decir tal vez para terminar la transmisión que estamos en la residencia virtual Looren América Latina y que cuenta con el apoyo de la Fundación de Cultura Suiza Pro Helvetia. Acabamos de tener a Ghazal Mosadeq con nosotros. Estamos trabajando estamos tratando un texto de ella, un material que está siendo traducido por Carlos Soto Román en Chile. Muchas gracias por participar de esta charla. Gracias, Ghazal, por supuesto. Carlos y Rodrigo por la moderación. Bueno, creo que podemos ir a